live in interesting times. For the headlines. China and the Philippines agreed to conduct a joint inquiry over the sinking of a Filipino fishing boat by a Chinese vessel in the disputed waters. U.S. President Donald Trump said he called off a planned retaliatory strike on Iran after deciding the likely death toll on the ground wouldn't be proportionate to the shootdown of a U.S. drone. 9 people died in a fiery crash of a small airplane used in a skydive operation. The U.S. Commerce Department blacklisted 5 Chinese tech entities in a new move against Beijing's supercomputing industry, likely to raise tensions ahead of a meeting between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping next week. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us. And now to the news. Foreign and finance ministers from the 10 countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, met in Bangkok on Saturday, setting the scene for a leaders' summit later in the day and on Sunday. The Chinese sinking of a Philippine boat, which endangered 22 Filipino fishermen, is expected to put anew the South China Sea territorial conflicts under the meeting's spotlight. Other key issues include the planned repatriation of more than 700,000 ethnic Rohingya Muslim refugees who have fled from a violent military crackdown in Buddhist-majority Myanmar since August of 2017 to neighboring Bangladesh in a crisis that has tested ASEAN. Critics have hit the regional bloc for failing to address the abuses in Myanmar's Rakhine state that the United Nations has called ethnic cleansing.
The need for ASEAN centrality based on unity and shared regional interests has never been more important at a time when our region is facing rising challenges and uncertainties.
The 10 ASEAN countries are Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam.
ASEAN's strategic priority of promoting
China and the Philippines agreed to conduct a joint inquiry over the sinking of a fishing boat by a Chinese vessel in the disputed waters, according to President Duterte's spokesman on Saturday. The June 9 incident, when the 2 boats collided in the South China Sea, has sparked public outrage. Manila has accused the Chinese trawler of abandoning the vessel's 22 Filipino crew members, later rescued by Vietnamese fishermen, but Beijing has rejected this. China states the trawler merely bumped the vessel and tried to receive the fishermen, but was afraid of being besieged by other Filipino fishing boats. President Duterte accepted the Chinese government's offer to conduct a joint investigation into the incident, according to presidential spokesman Salvador Panelo in a statement. He said to determine what really transpired. The incident occurred off the Reed Bank, a fish and natural gas-rich area of submerged coral reefs. It is claimed by China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Brunei, Malaysia, and Taiwan also have claims to all or part of the Flashpoint Sea, a key waterway for trillions of dollars in global trade each year. Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, speaking at an event in Bangkok on the eve of the ASEAN summit, joked that the U.S.-China trade war might be solved if U.S. President Donald Trump loses at the next election. Take a look.
I think they will soon come to their senses. They know that it is damaging to both the U.S. as well as China. I think if Trump loses the next election, we might have a solution.
Malaysia's Prime Minister also vowed to help Rohingya Muslims seeking refuge in Malaysia, reiterating the call for Southeast Asian leaders to stop the oppression of the stateless minority group expelled from Myanmar. Last year, Mahathir Mohamad castigated Myanmar civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi during the ASEAN meet in Singapore for defending the military's crackdown on the Rohingya.
We hope something can be done to stop the oppression of the Rohingya. Well, we have to receive them. They are refugees. As far as we can, as much as we can do for them, we'll do.
All right, let's check out the other news making headlines around the world. U.S. President Donald Trump said he called off a planned retaliatory strike on Iran after deciding the likely death toll on the ground wouldn't be proportionate to the shootdown of a U.S. drone. In an interview Friday, U.S. time, Trump tells Chuck Todd of NBC News Meet the Press that he was informed that about 150 Iranians would be killed by the strikes.
So did you greenlight something, or had you said, if we do it, I'll do this? What was the order you gave?
Nothing is greenlighted until the very end because things change, right?
So you never gave a final order?
No. But we had something ready to go subject to my approval. And they came in, and they came in about a half an hour before. They said, "Sir, we're about ready to go." I said, "I want a better
Planes
definition."
in the air? Were planes in the
we're
air?
about ready to go.
Yeah?
No, but they would have been pretty soon. And things would have happened to a point where you wouldn't turn back or couldn't turn back. So they came and they said, "Sir, we're ready to go. We'd like a decision." I said, "I want to know something before you go. How many people will be killed? In this case, Iranians." I said, "How many people are going to be killed?" "Sir, I'd like to get back to you on that." Great people, these generals. They said, came back, said, "Sir, approximately 150. And I thought about it for a second. I said, "You know what? They shot down an unmanned drone, plane, whatever you want to call it. And here we are sitting with 150 dead people that would have taken place probably within a half an hour after I said go ahead."
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I didn't think it was proportionate.
Now, the president offered a similar explanation on Twitter earlier on Friday. He also said he never gave a final order for the operation and that U.S. military airplanes were not yet in the air, but they would have been pretty soon. Meanwhile, President Trump said on Friday that the U.S. was cocked and loaded to retaliate against Iran for downing an unmanned American surveillance drone. But he canceled the strikes minutes before they were to be launched after being told 150 people could die. Now, Trump's tweeted statement raised important questions, including why he learned about possible deaths only at the last minute. Michael Eisenstadt, a former military analyst specializing in Persian Gulf affairs, said that if the president had come to the conclusion that a military strike against Iran was not going to advance American interests, it's never too late to pull back.
As long as the bombs have not been released from the aircraft, and if you feel and you come to the conclusion that the mission is not going to advance American interests, it's never too late to pull back. And so if that was the case, then it was maybe the wise thing to do.
The aborted attack was the closest the U.S. has come to a direct military strike on Iran in the year since the administration pulled out of the 2015 international agreement intended to curb the Iranian nuclear program and launched a campaign of increasing economic pressure against the Islamic Republic. Eisenstadt said he is concerned, however, that by the U.S. not taking some limited military action against Tehran, that Iran will be emboldened.
My concern is that the Iranians will be emboldened because the pattern in the past is when they come up against a stiff response, they back off and then try to find other ways in order to achieve their goals. Here, they're not meeting resistance. And as a result, I worry that they might overreach and do something foolish, and then the president will change the rules of the game and decide, no more, and we will have to respond militarily. And as a result, you might have a more expansive conflict than we would have had if we responded at a lower level earlier on.
The overnight events were a stark reminder of the serious risk of military conflict between U.S. and Iranian forces as the Trump administration combines its maximum pressure campaign of economic sanctions with the buildup of American troops in the region. And as tensions have mounted in recent weeks, there have been growing fears that either side could make a dire miscalculation leading to war. Citing Iranian threats, the U.S. recently sent an aircraft carrier to the Persian Gulf region and deployed additional troops alongside the tens of thousands already there. Now, all this has raised fears that a miscalculation or further rise in tensions could push the U.S. and Iran into an open conflict 40 years after Tehran's Islamic Revolution. The downing of the U.S. drone, a huge unmanned aircraft over the Strait of Hormuz, prompted accusations from the U.S. and Iran about who was the aggressor. Iran insisted the drone violated Iranian airspace. Washington, meanwhile, said it had been flying over international waters. The dispute has raised fears that an open conflict between the U.S. and Iran is on the horizon, and some lawmakers insisted the White House must consult with Congress before taking any actions. Meanwhile, a Russian lawmaker on Friday said that violent clashes that injured over 200 in Georgia were part of an inter-Georgian conflict.
Тот конфликт, который мы сейчас наблюдаем, он, конечно же, не конфликт России с Грузией. Он не конфликт грузинских политиков с российскими политиками, грузинских депутатов с российскими депутатами. Это внутригрузинский конфликт.
Thursday's clashes in Georgia's capital were sparked by a Russian lawmaker who took the speaker's seat as a group of international lawmakers met at the Georgian parliament in Tbilisi. It angered the opposition, which saw the current Georgian government as over-friendly to Russian interests. Russia and Georgia broke off diplomatic relations after a 2008 war, but steps have been made in recent years to restore ties. Kosachev also commented on the rising tension between Washington and Tehran following Iran's downing of a large U.S. drone, which it said violated its airspace. The U.S. said the unmanned drone was in international space. The U.S. launched a retaliatory strike Thursday night, which President Trump said he canceled 10 minutes before it was to take place because he learned there could be 150 deaths. Now, Kosachev said he believed there are also smart people in Trump's entourage who understand that a quick victory over Iran is absolutely impossible. Take a look.
Уверен в том, что в окружении Трампа достаточно людей, которые хотели бы реализовать силовой сценарий на иранском направлении. Им хочется победы, быстрой, молниеносной. Им хочется крови, если хотите. Но я искренне верю в то, что в окружении Трампа достаточно людей здравомыслящих, людей, которые понимают, что быстрая, молниеносная победа над Ираном совершенно точно невозможна.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has rejected charges against Russian citizens for their alleged roles in the downing of a Malaysian Airlines passenger jet over Ukraine 5 years ago, saying they lack proof. The international team investigating the 2014 downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 announced murder charges Wednesday against 3 Russians and 1 Ukrainian for their alleged roles in the attack that killed all 298 people on board. Now, speaking to reporters on Thursday, President Putin claimed there is no proof whatsoever behind the charges and criticized the investigators, saying they ignored evidence provided by Russia. He also blamed Ukraine for setting the stage for the tragedy, saying they failed to close their airspace to commercial flights despite the separatist fighting in the east.
Россия никогда не уклонялась от своей ответственности, если на ее плечах эта ответственность лежит. То, что мы видели и представлено в качестве доказательств вины России, нас абсолютно не устраивает. Мы считаем, что там нет никаких доказательств. И все, что было представлено, ни о чем не говорит. У нас есть своя версия, мы ее представили, но, к сожалению, нас никто слушать не хочет. И пока не будет реального диалога, то мы не найдем и правильного ответа на те вопросы, которые до сих пор остаются открытыми, связанные с трагедией самолета и гибелью людей.
President Putin also said that the Russian private military contractors have been active in Syria, adding that they don't represent the Russian state. Asked why the government doesn't offer veterans benefits to private contractors who fought in Syria, the president said that they've been there in their private capacity and engaged in oil exploration. He also added that it was not the Russian government and not the Russian state, so he wouldn't comment on it. The statement marked the president's first acknowledgement that Russian private military contractors were active in Syria. Russian media have reported that the so-called Wagner company has sent thousands of mercenaries to Syria, augmenting the Russian military. The company has been linked to businessman Yevgeny Prigozhin, indicted by the U.S. for meddling in the 2016 elections. Now, the president said that Russia doesn't want to regain its Soviet-era superpower clout. Speaking after Thursday's call-in show, the Russian leader told reporters that we don't want to be like the Soviet Union that enforced its way of life and political system on its neighbors, including countries of Eastern Europe. He charged that the U.S. has failed to learn from Soviet mistakes in a bid for global domination.
Мы не хотим вернуться к тому состоянию, в котором находился Советский Союз, когда он навязывал своим соседям, в том числе странам Восточной Европы, образ жизни, политическую систему и так далее. Это контрпродуктивно, это слишком затратно и не имеет перспектив, исторических перспектив. Нельзя заставить другие народы жить по своим собственным лекалам. Но, судя по всему, этот печальный опыт Советского Союза не учитывается некоторыми нашими партнерами на Западе. Они повторяют те же самые ошибки, наступают на те же самые грабли.
Eagle News International will be right back.
Visiting the Philippines, Manila or Quezon City is a popular destination. But oftentimes the hustle and bustle of the city can be more stressful on your vacation. So when you feel the need to reconnect to nature or relax again, there's a beautiful oasis just outside of the city called the Garden at Ciudad de Victoria. species that you can see here include hydrangea, snapdragon, and stargazers. They're truly beautiful. The gardens at Ciudad de Victoria are so peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful that it's become a haven for young couples and a very popular venue for engagement photos. The next time you want an escape from the big city, the garden at Ciudad de Victoria is a wonderful place to visit.
Demonstrations flared anew as protesters blocked Hong Kong police headquarters into the evening on Friday. The latest event came after a deadline passed the previous day for the government to meet demands over highly unpopular extradition bills. Our EBC correspondent Kit Wong with this developing story.
Thousands, mainly student protesters, gathered outside Hong Kong government office after a deadline passed for meeting their demands related to controversial extradition legislation. Hong Kong extradition bill protest has continued on June 21, 2019, when thousands of protesters have surrounded the police headquarters. The protesters' rallying cry now focuses on the complete withdrawal of the bill, the release of all the detained activists, and investigation on police violence on the recent week protests.
They are shouting 放人, which means they want government to release those people they arrested.
During protests, some commercial buildings and business establishments were forced to close and gave way to the demonstrators. On Friday, protesters threw eggs at the police headquarters, though police had set steel barriers outside the building.
We are here in the police headquarters.
Among the demonstrators, we have talked to one of the mass demo leaders, Mr. Joshua Wong Chi Fung, for his sake.
Thousands of activists occupy outside Hong Kong police headquarters to show our anger towards how police use rubber bullets to shoot towards people and to suppress on our basic freedom. We urge government fully withdraw the extradition law amendment and not to define our peaceful protests as riots.
Now it has a senator here. They're convincing those protesters don't do anything or don't move into the police headquarters because otherwise the police will use the real bullet to shoot them.
The protesters remained camped outside the police headquarters until past midnight with their plan to stay overnight, but then decided to leave the premises by 2 a.m., with their list of demands still unmet.
From Hong Kong, reporting for Eagle News. I am Kip Wong and I am 1 with 25.
Nine people died in a fiery crash of a small airplane used in a skydive operation. Reports say there were no survivors after the twin-engine King airplane crashed Friday night, U.S. time, near Dillingham Airfield. This is on Oahu's North Shore. We have a report from our EBC Bureau in Hawaii. Here's Alfred Asenas. Alfred?
As you know, a twin-engine aircraft, a Beechcraft 65, crashed at Dillingham Airfield at Oahu Island's North Shore. I think we have a map that we can show you where Dillingham Airfield is, a reference to the rest of the island. It is on the northern edge of Oahu, quite a ways away from Honolulu, which is in the south. Now, it's about 30 minutes from my location, from where I'm at in central Oahu, and it's not a busy place. However, it is frequently visited by tourists because of the services and the programs provided there at Dillingham, namely a couple of companies that provide skydiving lessons, and I believe a glider company that provides the glider aircraft. So it at approximately 6:30 p.m. local time, the plane crashed within the compound, within the airfield at Dillingham. So there is a possibility that the crash took place upon takeoff. And sadly, very sadly, 9 people were killed, to include 6 employees, including possibly, obviously, the pilot and several instructors, as well as 3 paying customers. So obviously the jump did not take place at that point, and sadly enough, all of them perished, and there were no survivors. As a result of the crash, a portion of the highway beside it, which is Farrington Highway, had to be closed for first respondents to arrive at the scene and control the traffic and the situation there. And according to sources, what we have learned also is that the family members of some of those who were in that plane were at the airfield witnessing and having to witness this very, very horrific event. That is very sad news. We have also gotten a tweet from the city the mayor of the city county of Honolulu, Kirk Caldwell, and I quote, excuse me, "I am closely following the tragic developments out at Dillingham Airfield this evening. At this time, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of the victims." This was tweeted or posted as of 7:43 p.m. Local time. So, a few hours later, the highway had been reopened. However, information is very limited at this point. as to the identification and the nature of the crash. And according to Hawaii's Department of Transportation, the federal agencies, namely the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, are expected to lead in this investigation. Sadly enough, we've also covered aircraft crashes involving airplanes or even helicopters, mainly military aircraft, but this one is one of the biggest and unfortunate and most tragic, which involved 9 people and no survivors. We were trying to get a hold of some colleagues and some friends that we know here on the island who have had first-hand experience about skydiving, and we hope to share that with you in subsequent reports pending the significance of these developments. So that's all we have for now. Again, 9 people, no survivors, perished in a twin-engine aircraft that was supposed to go skydiving, and this was, according to what we've gathered, also it is owned by the Oahu Parachute Center, one of the companies that operate out of Dillingham Airfield. And I believe we have a snapshot of their website, which offers a sunset jumping option or package, in which the skydivers would jump out around sunset when there's still enough daylight just before the sun sets. And given the time that it crashed, just putting two and two together, that is possible that they were intending to jump out around sunset. So this is a little bit emotional even for yours truly, but that's all we have for now. And reporting from Central Oahu here in Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, 1 with 25. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Alfred, for that update. Meanwhile, on a lighter note, while on duty, firefighters respond to emergency calls at any given moment to address urgent and even dangerous situations. Now, to thank these brave firefighters, Iglesia Ni Cristo members from Sunderland, United Kingdom, held an appreciation day for them. John Lloyd Bautista with this story.
Firefighters often risk their lives to save others and have a great responsibility to protect the public in emergency situations, responding to a wide variety of calls such as car crashes, chemical spills, water rescue, and general rescue, as well as fires. The Iglesia Ni Cristo members in Sunderland, United Kingdom, organized Firefighters Appreciation Day to recognize their role in keeping the community safe. INC members traveled to Tynemouth Community Fire Station in their own vehicles, and they were then greeted by the firefighters. Members prepared a program which consisted of an INC video presentation showcasing various community activities. Performances followed by INC youth members. They sang songs specially dedicated to the firemen. Hand-drawn personalized cards were given with messages of thanks. The firefighters were stunned and grateful. Matt Curry, the watch manager of the station, who has worked in the fire department for 19 years, mentions that he has never had an experience or visit like this, and describes how rewarding it was and how genuinely touched he is, and proud of what the members of the Church of Christ do for their community.
Yeah, it feels amazing, to be honest. What a surprise today was. Just blown away and humbled by the love that you've all shared. You've come down here just to purely show appreciation and love and nice thoughts towards us. It is an amazing feeling. It's almost emotional. The positive sort of attitude that you brought into the station today just brightened up all of our days. So that message is the message that you bring as well. Like, do good things, be nice, help others when you can. It's what you've done to date with all of us.
I've been in the fire service for 19 years and I've never had an experience like this today, and it's an incredibly warm and rewarding experience today. I genuinely am touched and so proud of what you guys have done today for us. To come and just spend some time to say thank you and to have some appreciation is hugely it's hugely rewarding from our point of view, and I'm deeply grateful to your church and your church members.
INC members in Sunderland, United Kingdom, were able to express thanks to the firefighters. The genuine act of kindness was appreciated with smiles of the firefighters, knowing they made a difference. Reporting for EBC United Kingdom, I'm J.L. Bautista, and I am one with 25.
And the news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
Health is
For business news, this is Cesar Vallejos. Despite project delays caused by the 2019 budget impasse and global economic headwinds, the National Economic and Development Authority remains confident growth of above 6% is attainable this year. Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Ernesto Pernia said the economy can still grow by 6.5% this year. This is within the 6 to 7% growth target for 2019, but below the Philippine Development Plan target of 7 to 8%. Pernia lamented that the budget impasse was really a major factor for why the economy could not grow faster this year. Our economic outlook this year is still quite respectable, and we will remain among the best performing economies in Asia, but we will not be able to achieve our 7 to 8% economic growth target. Pernia added the delay in the 2019 budget passage prevented government spending from boosting the GDP. Government spending, he said, is a traditionally strong stimulus for the economy. He said ideally, every peso spent by the government translates to benefits worth 10 pesos. The size of the impact of government spending on the economy means incomes for government suppliers and jobs. The first 5G in Southeast Asia is now in the Philippines. Globe Telecom will offer next month a 5th generation or 5G wireless broadband for Philippine homes, the first commercially available internet with such speed in Southeast Asia. We made a crucial step in fulfilling our goal of connecting more Filipino homes, Ernest Koo, president of Globe, said in a news statement. Offering 5G speed, which is faster and more secure, will help the company's 2020 goal of connecting 2 million households to its various home internet products from 1.7 million in the first quarter, Koo said. The venture of Ayala Corporation and Singapore Telecommunications Limited will initially offer 5G packages in Pasig City in the capital region and in nearby provinces of Cavite and Bulacan. Former Hong Kong Chief Secretary Anson Chan said on Friday the territory's current government should drop highly controversial extradition legislation that has sparked mass protests. Chan, who served as head of the civil service under the former British colonial administration and a Chinese-installed leadership that succeeded it in 1997, said passage of the proposed legislation that would permit the extradition of suspects to mainland China placed everybody's individual freedom and safety at risk. Chan said Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam and her government appear to have underestimated the degree of public dissatisfaction with the bills, which many see as part of a push to draw the city closer to Beijing.
I think the government has had sufficient notice of the depth of worries and concern expressed by people at all levels, including the business sector. And it's not just the local business sector. So it's very important for the government to tell the people, I am prepared to pause. If the government insists on bulldozing these proposals through a very compliant legislative council, then a lot of foreign business people will think twice about locating in Hong Kong. They might just as well go directly into China and take the attendant risks. Why bother to come to Hong Kong? And we cannot pretend on the one hand to be an international and premier financial and services center and then goes and deal this very, very heavy blow to business confidence.
The U.S. Commerce Department blacklisted 5 Chinese tech entities Friday in a new move against Beijing's supercomputing industry, likely to raise tensions ahead of a meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping next week. The notice targets Sugon, a prominent Chinese supercomputer manufacturer, along with 3 of its microchip subsidiaries and a computing institute owned by the People's Liberation Army. All of the entities will be effectively barred from obtaining U.S. technology after the government determined they were acting contrary to the national security or foreign policy interests of the United States. Trade tensions between the world's top 2 economies have spilled over into the tech sector in recent months, with Trump's administration moving to essentially ban Chinese tech firm Huawei from the huge U.S. market on security grounds. In May, it added Huawei to an entity list of companies barred from receiving U.S.-made components without permission from Washington, though the company was granted a 90-day reprieve. Facebook and Google have since both announced they will move to cut off Huawei in order to comply with the U.S. sanctions, further isolating the Chinese tech giant. Earlier this month, Beijing summoned executives from American firms Dell and Microsoft and South Korea's Samsung, among others, to warn them that any moves to ramp down their businesses in China may lead to retaliation, the New York Times reported. Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi are set to meet next week on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Japan. American businesses and trade associations are telling the Trump administration that an escalating trade war with China will hurt families, jobs, and the U.S. economy. The U.S. Trade Representative's Office is holding public hearings starting this week for 7 days that will consider extending the 25% tariffs to practically all Chinese imports not already hit with levies, including toys, shirts, household goods, and sneakers. More than 600 other companies and trade associations, including Walmart and Target, signed a letter dated last Thursday that was organized by a business coalition called Tariffs Hurt the Heartland. Trump has already imposed 25% tariffs on $250 billion of goods from China. The letter calls for the White House to remove the tariffs, saying they will have a significant negative long-term impact on American businesses, farmers, families, and the U.S. economy.
What we're urging is, rather than more tariffs and an escalation, both sides need to come back to the table. They need to get back to the point where we were, roughly 2 months ago. They need to finish this deal. And if they finish this deal, that'll be good for both near-term and long-term economic growth, particularly here in the United States. In particular, it becomes an escalating cost for consumers. So if you look at the breadth of Chinese imports and the tariffs that have been imposed to date, in most cases it's on intermediate inputs, so things that manufacturers or businesses buy from China that they then use to make other things here domestically in the United States. We're getting to that last raft of tariffs where we're talking about things that you and I buy in a store, and that's going to be felt directly by consumers. There's much less margin to absorb those increased tariff costs, and this is going to be a significant departure from what we've experienced over the last year or so with respect to how tariffs impact not just the economy but American families. It's certainly causing businesses to relook at their supply chain and their structure, but that's obviously easier said than done, right? In many cases, you're talking about long-standing, complicated supply chains, relationships based on quality assurances and things that have been worked out over a significant period of time. You can't simply just pick that up and move it somewhere else, all right? You can't move on a dime in these situations. So I think what folks are really looking for is, what's the long-term trajectory here? Are we addressing the bad industrial policies that China has? If so, and we're doing it in a way that ultimately leads to the removal of all these tariffs, that's good news and that's certainty. I think more than anything else, that's what American businesses are looking for, is a little more certainty about what the future looks like.
Southeast Asian leaders gathered in Bangkok on Saturday, determined to drive forward the world's largest commercial pact, with a trade war between the U.S. and China clouding the outlook for their export-led economies. Disputes in the Flashpoint South China Sea, Myanmar's persecution of the Rohingya Muslims, and plastic pollution in the seas are also set to be discussed at the two-day Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit chaired by Thailand. But trade will take center stage, with ASEAN leaders keen to hasten the signing of a China-drafted commercial deal covering around half the world's population. The regional comprehensive economic partnership includes all 10 ASEAN economies plus India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. It is seen as a mechanism for China to draft the rules of Asia-Pacific trade following a U.S. retreat from the region. Shortly after his election, President Donald Trump pulled the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, which would have been the world's largest trade deal, slamming it as an American job killer. While tit-for-tat tariffs between the world's biggest two economies have seen some manufacturers flee China to safer ASEAN hubs, economists say the big picture for global growth is bleak. In that context, RCEP is key to increasing trade volume, Thai government spokesman Werachon Secundatipa told reporters. The faster it gets implemented, the better, Martin M. Andanar, Philippines Communications Secretary, told reporters. Free trade is definitely what we need here in this region, he said, adding that the U.S.-China trade row has resulted in the entire world catching a cold. Progress on the deal has stuttered in recent months, with India digging in over fears cheap Chinese goods could flood its massive consumer market. Australia and New Zealand have also raised concerns over a lack of labor and environmental safeguards. At least 7 people died Saturday when an under-construction building owned by a Chinese company collapsed at a Cambodian beach resort, officials said, as rescuers scoured the giant rubble heap for survivors. The building went down before sunrise in the casino resort town Sihanoukville in southwestern Cambodia, a rapidly developing tourist hotspot awash with Chinese investments. 4 people have been arrested in connection with the accident, including the Chinese building owner, the head of the construction firm, and the contractor. A Cambodian landowner has also been held at provincial headquarters for questioning. The 7-story building was almost 80% complete when it crashed down early Saturday, the deadliest such accident in recent years in Cambodia. At least 21 people were reported injured, several critically, and at least 3 of the dead were Cambodian, including 2 workers and a translator. And that's it for business news. This is Cesar Vallejos. I'm one with 25. Eagle News International will be back. Stay with us.
Inspiring kids and young adults to chase after their dreams, the NBA Cares program continues its commitment to create positive, safe learning and a playing environment for the youth. Here's Eagle News Sports correspondent Gianna Palasigi.
Before heading to the floor for Game 4 of the NBA Finals, the Golden State Warriors invest time in their community by joining in the celebration of the new NBA Cares Learn and Play Zone at the Ira Jenkins Recreation Center. For the 5th straight year, the NBA has dedicated a center in Oakland, California, continuing with the tradition of building stronger and safer communities. The NBA and Oakland family banded together to champion the importance of raising youth to be excited about learning and playing. NBA Cares creates spaces for children that motivates them to develop their passions at a young age and grants opportunities for youth to reach their goals. In partnership with Kaiser Permanente, State Farm, and other generous sponsors, 4 newly renovated spaces were unveiled for the community to learn and play. These rooms included a multi-purpose room, game room, study room, and computer room, all decked out in blue and yellow, featuring some of the center's favorite warrior players on the wall. Youth will be able to use these spaces to participate in self-love dances, read with therapy animals, learn to cook their own healthy meals, conduct science projects, and so much more.
Again, I challenge you all to make the best use of this as you possibly can. I challenge you all and to just continue to be a better you. And I want to encourage you all to strive for whatever dream it is that you have, whether it's getting to the NBA, whether it's being the next commissioner of the NBA, whether it's being, the executive director of the NBA Players Association, whether it's having a dream of being Rick Welts and being the president of the Golden State Warriors, whatever it is, you can do it. Because what you also got to remember is Adam Silver was the same kid that sat here. And Steph Curry was the same kid that sat here. This is someone speaking. So go after your dreams, continue to work hard.
The players joined in all the fun during the grand opening of the new spaces. Draymond took it to the gym to learn self-defense, while Alfonso McKinney took a seat to read in the library with youth and therapy animals. Damian Jones got into action with a science experiment where everyone learned how to make their own colorful and messy slime. The Ira Jenkins Recreation Center has a long-standing relationship with the Warriors, having participated in the Junior Warriors Basketball League for over a decade. The center continues to be a physical activity and resource hub for the community, offering more and more every year.
This, like I said, is the heart of this community. So seniors come here, youth come here, adults come here. We've got workout classes, Zumba classes, we've got sports teams, cooking classes, and all different opportunities for people to be involved. And this is really, really cool. There are people out that want to come check it out and continue to be a part of this center. They also provided some wonderful scholarships, and so people that can't afford to pay for programming, we can scholarship those persons in programming.
The center is the 1,274th live, learn, or play space created by the NBA family. And each NBA Finals run for the Golden State Warriors impact the children and families of Oakland year after year. Reporting from Oakland, California, I'm Jana Polasigi, always one with 25.
All right, to Maryland now. The American Visionary Museum brought Baltimore amphibious and totally human-powered work of art celebrating 21 years of the kinetic sculpture race. Rose Papa Angeles with this story.
Engineered vehicles, all human-powered. Rain or shine, the fearless artists, engineer pilots, or kinetronauts will trek the streets of Baltimore, Maryland, dipping into the waters of the harbor, drilling through sand and mud, and speeding the highway to finish this 14-mile race called the Kinetic Sculpture Race. Imagine a bicycle, and then imagine a giant sculpture on top of it. Then races through the city of Baltimore, 15 miles. It must float over our inner harbor. In other words, it must be amphibious, exit the water, then through hill and dale, a mud pit, and a sand pit before crossing the finish line here. So that's our kinetic sculpture race, which we've been doing for 21 years here in Baltimore from the American Visionary Art Museum. How long did it take you to build it?
Definitely, I was estimating the time I put into it. I would say it took us over 3 months. and sorry that was conceptualizing, but we're very down to the wire on we're not here to win, we're just here to have fun.
For us, this is just the most wonderful celebration of human diversity and human creativity, and we make sure we make it every year. We just love it.
Ours is the Shark Tank, so we built it 12 years ago. It's powered by 8 people and driven by 1, and it's built from an old Suzuki Samurai, 1987 Suzuki Samurai. Transmission, drivetrain.
How long did it take you to build?
Too long. It was probably a 4-month build 12 years ago. It's gonna be a win. We're going for mediocrity.
One of these 25 sculptures will receive the much coveted ACE Award, the highest race challenge award, wherein a merciless ACE judge will watch their very move, and of course a chance to represent the East Coast in a 3-day all-terrain kinetic brand championship in California. But whether they receive an award or not, the Kinetnauts, as well as the spectators, come back every year, bigger, stronger, or even wackier, all for the sake of fun and kinetic engineering. From the 21st Kinetic Sculpture Race by the American Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore, Maryland, I am Rose Papa Angeles, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Rose. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always one with 25. Good night.